Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
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 Gopi Jana Balabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Balabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Prachachanarantana
Yashodanandana Brajajanarantana
Yashodanandana Prachachanarantana
Yashodanandana Brajajanarantana
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
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 Gopi Jana Balabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Gopi Jana Balabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Prachachanarantana
Yashodanandana Brajajanarantana
Yashodanandana Prachachanarantana
Yashodanandana Brajajanarantana
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamunatira Vanachari
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama
study of Bhakti Vaibhava. We're on unit number 9, chapter number 7 of the 3rd canto. We already covered other chapters. I thought it might be good for us to just review these questions. Do you have any problems with these questions, or is it very straightforward?
Usually I have to go back and look into the book.
Yeah, I would imagine you do. What happened after the entrance? This is chapter number 6. Oh, but let's go to 5. Why did the Vidura not immediately ask Maitreya about the Lord? What was that reason?
For the benefit of others, for the benefit of the more people.
Just out of humility.
Huh?
Out of humility.
Sorry?
Out of what? Out of
Humility.
Humility?
He didn't say that he understood that.
The Prabhupada mentioned in that purport that out of humility, he not ask direct about the Lord.
It also says that he was asking for the benefit of all the people, so he started off with asking about creation.
Yes, it was more like for the benefit of the common man, right? Yeah. I think that was more the answer, that for the benefit of the common people, because they don't know about the Lord. And if we would simply speak about the Lord, well, they're not ready to hear about it. And so he introduced the subject matter. Here's something from the beginning. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna doesn't immediately speak about Bhakti Yoga, but he prepares people for Bhakti Yoga by, the yoga ladder, then coming to Bhakti. So similarly, Maitreya didn't immediately ask about the Lord, thinking about the common people. Why is there scarcity in the world? Comment on scarcity in the world. What did Prabhupada have to say?
Mismanagement.
Mismanagement.
Mismanagement, yeah. There's no scarcity. There's no real scarcity. Scarcity is created by mismanagement. Why is the civilized man expected to give protection to the bulls and cows? Yes, what do we get from the bulls and the cows?
Cows are like mother giving milk.
They give milk, which is very important for developing the good brain and intelligence. And the bull,
Helping in agriculture.
huh? The bull, yes, Maraji?
They are help in cultivating the field.
Yeah, they help in cultivating the land. The bulls provide, they can also provide means of transportation. They can do steady service. You train the bulls up, if they're trained up nicely, you can plough the fields. What about some differences between mundane literature and Krishna Katha? What did Prabhupada have to say about that? Mundane literature.
Krishna Katha helps us to free ourselves from family attachment.
Yes.
Towards our attachment.
And what about mundane literature?
After some days, mundane literature becomes stale, so prescribed, and the Krishna
Yeah,
Katha-
quickly, right? Newspaper is waste paper after a few hours.
Krishna Katha is even.
So mundane literature. What's the meaning of Adhoksaja?
Beyond the perception of our material senses.
Yes, cannot be understood by the material senses, beyond the perception of mundane senses. What about the process by which living entities appear? Who would like to tell us that? What's the process by which the living entities appear in this world?
They are implemented by the Lord, the glance of the Lord.
Yeah, injected by the glance of the Lord into
The Mahatattva of
Mm.
Vedanta.
into the Mahatattva.
Brahma creates various living beings, the Prajapatis, and the Prajapatis create various other living beings.
Is that mentioned in that section? Huh?
We're all it's all really together now because we're doing this also in the morning, third canto.
24, 25, 26. You have to be careful what you start saying. They want to hear from that text, specific text.
After the glance into the Mahatattva, then by influence of eternal time, living entities appear.
By the influence of
Eternal time. Time.
Time.
influence of time. Then the living entities appear. Okay. What is the Mahatattva?
Unmanifested, amalgamated state of the universe. It comes after the pranam.
The unmanifested state?
The amalgamation of all the parts, all material elements.
It's the total
Conscious.
combination of all the elements of the material creation. Mahatattva, the Prabhupada describes it in many different ways. And it's the manifested state of all the elements of the material creation. What is the role of false ego?
It's the binding force of material existence.
Good, yes, the binding force of material nature binds us into the material existence. And which items are produced by the interaction of false ego and the mode of goodness?
Mind and the demigod.
Mind
Demigod.
and the demigods. And what's produced from the mode of passion?
Senses.
Intellect, intelligence.
It doesn't mention the intelligence in that section. I read
With the
it.
perfection.
Senses.
In Kapila Siksha it mentions intelligence. When they're described, but in this section they don't mention intelligence. What comes from the mode of passion?
Senses.
The senses. And what comes from the mode of ignorance? and
The sense objects.
and the elements of material nature. What are the river Ganga and the Bhagavad Gita considered to be?
They can save from the punishment of Janga.
It says, what are they considered to be?
Chief sources of transcendental happiness for mankind. The chief sources of transcendental happiness for mankind.
A source of transcendental happiness for mankind? Okay. The result of hearing Krishna Katha. Yeah. Compare the results of jnana and yoga with the results of bhakti.
Jnana and yoga are extremely difficult with lots of austerities, and one only gets at best Brahman realization, whereas bhakti is blissful all the way through, and one can go back to Godhead.
Yeah, right. Jnana and yoga, they're difficult processes, take a lot of trouble, and ultimately the result is impersonal liberation, which is not actually not actual real happiness. There's no real pleasure there on the platform of liberation. There's no suffering, but there's no real spiritual pleasure. But the result of bhakti is you enjoy spiritual pleasure. You get spiritual pleasure. What happened, and then going on to chapter 6, what happened after the entrance of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu in the universe?
He laid down for a period of 1,000 years, and then the law came out of his navel.
What happened? Anybody else?
Half of the universe was filled with water.
Huh?
Half of the universe was filled with water.
Yes, right. That's true. After the answer, he filled up the half of the universe with water, and he lay on that water for 1,000 years. Then the difference between the demigods and ordinary living entities. The difference between the demigods and ordinary living entities, how is it described? Text number 12.
The demigods don't have a tendency to lord over material nature.
They don't have the
They are
tendency.
freed from the tendency. Prabhupada writes the book.
Yeah. On ordinary, is that ordinary living entities? They're not free from that, is it?
Yeah.
And what is the most important source of knowledge? And why? The most important source of knowledge?
Yeah. Yes.
Huh?
Sound.
Sound.
Sound is the most important.
Sound, isn't it? So using the ears to hear, the most important source. Text 17. What does it mention? Have you already answered all these questions? No. Yeah. You're supposed to answer these questions before you come to these classes. What about about the directors of material affairs in the universal form. Some of the directors, can you name one?
Varun,
What does he control?
the tongue,
And what quality? What particular aspect of the tongue?
the taste,
Taste, right. Yes. Varun. And you, Prabhu? Give me one director of material nature.
Agni,
And what's he controlling?
mouth, and the speech.
Speech, right? Yes. Marriages? Can you give one?
Ashwini Kumar,
Ashwini Kumars. What are they controlling?
smell.
Smell. So, what happened? Where did they come from in the universal form?
Two nostrils.
Two nostrils, right? Yes, good. Another one?
The sun. Surya.
Huh?
Sun. The sun god.
The sun?
Yes.
Yes. So sun goddess?
With 2 eyes.
With 2 eyes?
Vishnu.
Yes, good. Another one? One more?
Indra.
Huh?
Indra. Indra.
Indra? What's he providing?
He is making the living be entity to transact business for livelihood.
With hands?
In the hands, yeah.
Yes, to do activity, make livelihood, business. Okay, good. Why is the mouth the most important of the bodily parts?
Vedic wisdom came out of the mouth part of Virat Room.
What came out of the mouth?
Vedic wisdom.
Vedic scripture. Yep. Is that why it's the most important?
If other part of the body is cut off, then one can continue his life, but mouth is cut off. You can
Yeah. You can't live without the mouth, eh? And the problems of human society are due to what?
Lack of qualified brahmanas and kshatriyas.
Yes, no qualified Brahmins and Kshatriyas, and too much importance given to Sudras and Vaishyas. What is the meaning of Visha?
Agriculture.
Huh?
Agriculture.
Agriculture, right. Different subsections of the Vaishyas, oh my goodness, that's...
Those who deal with the cows,
Huh?
those who deal with the business exchange,
Yeah.
banking, that type of thing, those who are mercantile.
Yeah, there was many different kinds of divisions, right?
Kshatri landowners.
Hmm?
Kshatri landowners.
Landowners, yeah, tilling the soils and even selling gold and different things were mentioned. Okay. So you have to go over these carefully. Try to pick out which ones you think will be asked. A lot of questions there. Okay, so we'll go back to chapter 7. We were hearing how Maitreya was explaining how the demigods offered prayers, they needed help to go on with the creation. So the Lord created the universal form. And from that universal form, the different demigods came out, and they gave the different functions of the senses, which we were mentioning. Some of them we were describing some of these different demigods and how they were doing their duties, different functions to help the universal creation to proceed. And then Maitreya went on and he described about the opulence of the Lord, how it's inconceivable, how the Lord had inconceivable powers and he felt himself unable to properly describe everything. And we heard even about Brahma, had been meditating for how long? Lord Brahma had been meditating, trying to understand the Lord for how long?
1,000 celestial years.
For 1,000 celestial years. And what did he come to? What conclusion did he come to?
No one can understand.
The Lord is inconceivable, beyond the power of our senses to understand. Alright, so then chapter 7 begins. Sukadeva Goswami says, O king, while Maitreya, the great sage, was thus speaking, Vidura, the learned son of Dvaipayana Vyas, expressed a request in a pleasing manner by asking this question. Vidura's got some nice question to ask. O great Brahmana, since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable, how is he connected with the material modes of nature and their activities? How is he connected with the material modes of nature and their activities? So he is the complete spiritual whole and is unchangeable. How is he connected with the material nature? If this is his pastime, how do the activities of the unchangeable take place and exhibit qualities without the modes of nature? Right? So, it's worded in a little difficult manner. I read Barijan Prabhu's commentary on this, and he makes it a bit easier to understand. He simply says that Vidura wanted to understand how the Lord performing the work of creation, so is he affected by the material energy? Because usually you do activities, you do some activity, you get some kind of reaction from it. So does that happen to the Supreme Lord also? That he's doing something in the material world, right? But as mentioned here, he said he's a complete spiritual whole. So he's not of this material world, but he's connected with the material nature. Or he wants to know, how is he connected with the material nature? How do the activities of the unchangeable take place? Because if you do some activity, you change. You go through changes when you do things, right? You go to work, you go through some changes. And so the Lord is performing this work of creation. But he's unchangeable. So how do the activities take place? Within the modes of nature, or without the modes of nature. He's working, producing, doing creation and using the modes of nature. Does he get affected by them? Because when you go to work, you get affected, right? You get affected by the different modes of nature. So how does it work in the case of the Supreme Lord? So Prabhupada explains here in the purport, the activities of the Lord are performed through the agency of his energies. This manifestation is bewildering to the living entities. The Lord is the master of the energies, and the living entities are under the control of the energies. So Prabhupada said, Vidura is clearing the misconception that when the Lord either descends to the earth in his incarnation or appears himself with all his potencies, he too is subjected to the influence of Maya, just like an ordinary living entity. He gets affected. Does this happen to the Lord also? So this is generally the calculation of less intelligent people. Vidura is hearing the Greek sage Maitreya refute these arguments. The Lord is described in this verse as Chinmatra, or completely spiritual. And then Prabhupada continues, the Lord has unlimited potencies, can create and manifest wonderful things, temporary and permanent. So the material world appears to be temporary. For some time it's manifest, and then again annihilated, and then again the creation, and then again and again the day comes, and again the night falls, right? Bhutva bhutva praliyate. Again and again the creation comes. Unlike the spiritual world, which is transcendental, Prabhupada says, nirguna, spiritual world is pure. So the spiritual world is eternal, it's not subject to decay or annihilation. It's pure goodness. So the Lord is eternal and unchangeable. He's never subjugated by anything like material influence. How can his activities and form be conceived to be under the influence of Maya, as is the case with the living entities? Of course, the Lord is never under the influence of Maya. Right? He is the controller of the material energy. And this was seen by Vyasadeva, was described by Vyasadeva after he got instruction from Narada Muni, and then he sat in meditation, he sat in trance, and he fixed his mind on the Supreme Lord, and he saw how the Supreme Lord was there, and the energy was also there, his material energy was there, and it was under his full control. Right? We say that the material nature, Durga, she moves like a shadow under the control of the Lord. She's not independent, but she's the shadow of Krishna. So the material energy is like... And then Prabhupada goes on, gives this example about the magician. He does wonderful things, he can produce things, he can make a cow appear, he can make it disappear. And so the Lord can do these wonderful things, he can create whole universes. So the Lord, as we learned in the Ishopanishad, Om Purnam Ada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam. Translation. I ask them, they alone? I know the Indians, they never learn the translation. They know the Sanskrit. Ask them the translation.
Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfectly complete. And because He's completely perfect, all emanations from Him that emanate from Him are also perfectly complete in themselves. Even though so many complete units emanate from the complete whole, He still remains complete balance.
Yeah, it's easier when you're from the West, you know, to memorizing. The Indian devotees, they have their Bengali and their Hindi and languages, so it's not so easy for them to memorize the translations. Right, so the personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And all emanations from Him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped by themselves. And so even though so many things come from him, he remains complete. So that is the transcendental nature of the Lord. We take something away from the book. If you take a page out of your book is no longer complete. But the Lord, what's the key word? The key word to understand that potency of the Lord? No, Purnam. Purnam. Purnam means?
Complete.
Perfect and complete, right? Purnam. So the Lord's potency is always the same. So there's no question of him becoming contaminated or changed or affected by the material nature. He is Saguna. Prabhupada writes the Lord is Saguna, meaning he's without material qualities, but at the same time, well, Saguna with qualities, but at the same time he's Nirguna, without qualities. He's not in touch with the material energy. He has his own potency, Saguna, he has qualities, but at the same time he's Nirguna. He doesn't have material, he's not in touch with the material energy. And Prabhupada gives the example about the king and the prison house. The king comes to the prison, so he's not, or he may be in the prison, but he's not like the other prisoners. So the Lord has all qualities, he has opulences, but they're not material, they're not connected with the material nature. His activities are always transcendental. And then Prabhupada said that's why liberated souls like Sukadeva Goswami are attracted to them. So Vidura is asking, how can the Lord's activities be in the modes of material nature? Well, they're not in the modes of material nature, but foolish people with a poor fund of knowledge, they think that if you have activities, it must be material, right? We were telling yesterday about how the Buddhists and people like that, they want to stop everything. You know that sometimes they have if you go to the Buddhist temple, they have see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. You know, you should stop all activities. They think you shouldn't see anything, you shouldn't speak anything, shouldn't hear anything. They think it's all negation, stop everything. But that's not necessary. What we have to do, you have to purify everything. Don't talk nonsense, don't hear nonsense, and don't see the nonsense. But we should see Krishna, and we should hear about Krishna, and we should speak about Krishna. Everything can be done in the proper way. And so these people, they have a poor fund of knowledge. They want to stop everything. But what we need to do is purify everything. We have to know how to use the senses. So the conditioned souls, they work through the modes of nature. People think they're free, right? They say, I'm free, I can eat what I like, I'm free. You Hare Krishnas, you're not free. They think they're free, but actually they're not free. They're controlled by the modes of nature. The material energy is controlling them. They're not free at all, but they're thinking they're free. So this is their illusion. And of course, we are also not free. We're under the internal potency of the Lord. We're under the spiritual energy. They're under the material energy. And material energy binds. The material energy, Mother Durga has her trident, to pierce the living entity with so many miseries. But the Lord, His lotus feet are very soothing, and the Lord gives shelter. Right? We heard the demigods pray, the Lord is like an umbrella protecting the devotee from the miseries of material existence. Alright, so Vidura asked his question. He wants to understand about the Lord. Is he in touch with the modes of nature? Will be answered in a few verses. He continues more. He talks about boys are enthusiastic to play with other boys or with various diversions because they are encouraged by desire. But there is no possibility of desire for the Lord because He is self-satisfied and detached from everything at all times. He's detached. The Lord doesn't have anything. He's complete in Himself. He's Purnam. So He's completely satisfied. And he, at the same time, he's not attached to anything. One of the qualities of Bhagavan is that he is completely renounced. He's not attached. He can give up everything. Right? Lord Krishna renounces the gopis. He renounces the wealth of the material world. Everyone in the material world, they're all working, trying to get wealth. But Krishna doesn't need to work to get wealth. It's all His wealth. He has everything. He doesn't need anything. People who don't have it want to get it. But Krishna has everything. He doesn't have to work to get anything. He is complete. Right? There was that pastime in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There was the one devotee, Kamalakanta Vishvasa. You know him? Kamalakanta Vishvasa. He was the secretary of Advaita Acharya. So he wrote a message to the king of Puri, to Maharaj Prataparudra. He wrote a message to the king and he said, Advaita Acharya is the personality of Godhead. And he's in debt 300 rupees. So somehow this note came to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Lord Chaitanya got the note, he said, oh, very good. And he said, Advaita Acharya is the personality of Godhead. He said, this is correct. He is the personality of Godhead. But he said, he's also saying Advaita Acharya is in debt 300 rupees. He said, how can this be? He said, this is an offense. He said, I don't want this Kamalakanta Vishvasa to come in my presence again. So when Advaita Acharya heard this, then Advaita Acharya came and protested to Lord Chaitanya. He said, why are you giving more mercy to him than you gave to me? Advaita Acharya said, when I preached Yoga Vashishta, you came and you beat me, but you never banned me from your association. But you're giving more mercy to Kamalakanta Vishvasa than I got. Why are you giving him more mercy than me? So Lord Chaitanya just smiled and said, okay, bring him. And so they brought Kamalakanta Vishvasa and Lord Chaitanya instructed him. And he instructed him that this is not proper what you've said. You cannot declare someone to be God and to be in debt 300 rupees. If he is actually the Supreme Lord, then he has all opulences. He's Bhagavan. So, and he instructed all the devotees also. He said, don't take money from materialistic people. That was another point in Lord Chaitanya's teaching. He didn't like that Kamalakanta Vishvasa was appealing to the king to pay the debt of Advaita Acharya. He said the devotees don't want to take money from materialistic people. So that is not good. Should be very careful where you take money. Just like where we take food, we're very careful. Right? We won't take food from non-devotees. So in the same way, we shouldn't take money for our own self from people who are not devotees or materialistic.
I have a question about that, Maya.
Yeah.
I've always wondered about that pastime with Mahaprabhu's instructions, because sometimes we find that devotees we want to do something for Krishna, and if we have an opportunity to get some Lakshmi to do that, it seems like the Krishna conscious thing to do, and what most devotees would do is take the Lakshmi, like if someone wants to give a donation, or even a materialistic person may be interested in giving some donation for some impious reason, we still take that donation to help build the temple, or to buy more books, or to do something like that. So how are we to understand? Because Mahaprabhu also instructs that those in the renounced order of life shouldn't take money from materialistic people.
Yes, we don't take money for our own needs, but we do, and if we can take the money, we give it to the society, use it in the service of the Krishna conscious mission. You know, when we go out distributing books and so on, we take money from all kinds of people, sinful people, and then give it to Krishna for the service of Krishna. So that's purifying them. But if we take it for our own needs, then it's not good.
Sometimes our family members, they're not devotees, they're materialistic, and they give money and they say use it for your necessities. So what happens when we use it? Should we avoid using those money?
Well, if you're using it for Krishna, you know, it's better than, you know, what will they do with the money? They're going to use it for their sense gratification. They're not going to use it for Krishna if they're not devotees. But if they give it to you and you use it for Krishna, then there's some benefit for them. But you have to be cautious. You know, we don't like to depend too much on people who are not devotees. We just depend on them all the time, to take money from them all the time. you want to think about supporting yourself. At the same time, they get some benefit. If you take the money and you give it to the temple, then that's very good, right? You give it, saying, you take the money, you give it to TOVP, build the TOVP, oh, very good, your parents will benefit. But if you take the money just for your own purpose, to buy your clothes, buy a new gopi dress, and different things like that, you know, okay, it's not so good, you know. So anyway, Krishna is self-satisfied, he's detached from everything. One without a second, no possibility that anything besides him can exist. So anyway, everything is coming from Krishna, everything depends on him. This is the opulence of the Lord's attachment and detachment. He is attached to everything, yet he is detached from all. Interesting statement. He is attached to everything because Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina, by his avyakta murtina, by his unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. So he is attached to everything, but at the same time he's detached. He said, yet I am not in everything. All things are situated in him, yet he is not in them. By a self-sheltered potency of the three modes of material nature, the Lord has caused the creation of this universe. By her, he maintains the creation and conversely dissolves it again and again. Alright, so he's just repeating the nature of material existence. And then he says, the pure soul. Now he's coming to another question. The pure soul is pure consciousness and is never out of consciousness, either due to circumstances, time, situation, dreams, or other causes. How then does he become engaged in nescience? Right, we're all pure souls. We're all pure souls, and we're always conscious. So, how does a living entity, how is it possible that the jiva is engaged in nescience? So this is Vidura's other question. How is it the jiva becomes influenced by the Maya Shakti? When a living man moves from one place to another, he is conscious, he has changed his position. He is always present, just like electricity. So we can remember incidents from the past, and we can think about the future. We never forget our identity, even though we're in awkward. How can the living entity forget his real identity? Right? We forget our real identity as spirit souls, and we identify with the material energy. How does this happen? The conclusion is that the living entity is influenced by the avidya potency. Due to the power of this avidya, the material nescience, it covers up the living entity. The living entity is para prakriti, is part and parcel of the Lord. We are the potency, not the potent. The Lord is the potent, and we are the potency. So one potency may be overcome by another potency. But to the potent, meaning to Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the potent, all potencies are under his control. The jiva potency, or the Kshetragna Shakti of the Lord, has the tendency to be overpowered by the external potency, avidya karma, samkhya. And in this way, he is placed in the awkward circumstances of material existence. The living entity cannot be forgetful of his real identity unless influenced by the avidya potency. Because the living entity is prone to be influenced by the other, he can never equal the Supreme Potent. So, how does the living entity... And he continues this question, Vidura continues, that the Lord as the Super Soul is situated in every living being's heart. Why then do the living entity's activities result in misfortune and misery? Very good question, right? Why do we suffer when the Lord is situated in our heart as a super soul? Why are we suffering in spite of the Lord's presence? So this is a very proper question. And Prabhupada explains, two souls like two birds. The jiva, living entity, is one with the Lord. His knowledge in the pure state of life cannot be covered by nations, especially in the presence of the Supreme Lord. How then does the living entity become subjected to ignorance and covered by the influence of Maya? So the Lord is Bhuta-Brit, maintainer. Why does He allow us to suffer so many miseries? It should not be so, but we see that it happens everywhere. So this is a very nice question. O great and learned one, my mind is greatly illusioned by the distress of these nations, and I therefore request you to clear it up. And so then Sukadeva Goswami again comes back. Maitreya, being thus agitated by the inquisitive Vidura, at first seemed astonished. Oh, he was astonished, what a question. But then he replied to him without hesitation, since he was fully God conscious. So, like that, you get sometimes people ask you a question like that, and but Krishna from the heart dictates, tells you how to respond to these things. And Prabhupada said, Maitreya had no reason to be astonished at such contradictory questions by Vidura. As a devotee, he externally expressed surprise, as if he did not know how to reply. But then he immediately became perfectly settled and replied to Vidura. Prabhupada said, you can bring anyone to me and I will answer the questions. I can answer any of the questions. Anyone who's a devotee knows about Krishna to some extent, and service to Krishna makes him able to know everything by the grace of Krishna. But the devotee, out of his genuine humility, will express himself to be ignorant, but at the same time he's full of knowledge. So Maitreya replies, certain conditioned souls put forward the theory that the Supreme Brahman is overcome by illusion or Maya, and at the same time they maintain that he is unconditioned. This is against all logic. Right? It's contradictory. If we say that he's overcome by illusion, and then at the same time we say he's not conditioned, then how could it be both? It would be a contradictory statement. You say one thing and then you say the other. And so Prabhupada explains, he said, it appears that the Lord is 100% spiritual. So he cannot be the cause of the illusory potency which covers the individual soul. But there is no doubt that the illusory energy is also the energy of Krishna. It's part and parcel of Krishna. And Prabhupada talks about Vyasadeva seeing the external potency, and why the external potency acts in this way, and it's explained. Prabhupada quotes the Acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Jiva Goswami. They explain how the material energy is working. Right? What's the example they give? Prabhupada explains the material illusory energy is distinct from the spiritual energy. It is one of the many energies of the Lord, and thus the material modes of nature are surely qualities of the Lord. The energy and the energetic are not different. And although such energy is one with the Lord, he is never overpowered by it. Although the living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, they are overcome by the material energy. Right? The living entities, they're tiny, they're tatastha shakti. We living entities are very small, so we're easily overcome by the material energy. But the Lord is the source of the energy. He's not going to be conquered by his own energy. So Prabhupada talks about the yogam aishwaryam, the inconceivable, and he explains how this point is often misunderstood by the Mayavadi philosophers, the Gyanis, because they talk about God being a poor man. As we heard, Advaita Acharya saying in debt 300 rupees. So a poor man, they propose that the Supreme Lord is overcome by the material energy. They're saying the impersonalists say we are all God, but we've been overcome by the material energy. And they give the example that God also can become a poor man. So the Acharyas give this example, and you can see the example. They say that the sun is all light, but the clouds, darkness and snowfall are all part and parcel of the sun. Without the sun, there's no possibility of the sky being overcast with clouds or darkness. Like clouds and darkness are creations of the sun, or the absence of the sun. You get clouds and darkness. And there can be no snowfall on the earth either. Life is sustained by the sun. Life is disturbed by darkness and snowfall produced by the sun. But it is also a fact that the sun itself is never overcome by darkness, clouds or snowfall. Sun is far away from all these disturbances. So the sun, people with poor knowledge, they say the sun is covered by a cloud or by darkness. So the Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, is always unaffected by the influence of the material energy. Although it is one of his energies, it is one of his energies. The material energy is his energy. Maya Jakshena Prakriti Surya. This material nature is working under my direction. Naparasya Shakti Vividaiva Shruyate. The Lord has many different potencies, possesses many different potencies. So the material energy is one of the potencies of the Lord. And the Acharyas have given this example about the creation of the clouds and the snowfall and the darkness, that these things are all created by the sun. And the same way the Supreme Lord, he creates the different effects of the material nature. It's all done by him. But he's never affected by these things. He's never put under the illusion. So Prabhupada discusses this point. Several examples are given. He says the clouds, darkness and snowfall can cover only a very insignificant portion of the sun's rays. Right? It's dark, it may be dark in New York. It's daylight in Mayapur, but it may be dark in New York. So one part of the planet is dark, another part of the planet is not. So darkness it's only a small portion. And similarly the clouds. Well, Mayapur is covered with clouds, but you go a few miles over to Bombay, probably the sky will be clear. And similarly, clouds, snowfall, darkness is snowfall. Oh, it's snowing in Nevada, or snowing in Canada, but there's no snow in Florida. There's no snow in Africa. The snow is just in places like Canada and Russia. These places there's snow, not everywhere. So this is the nature of these things. They covered only a portion of the sun's rays. So the material nature acts only on a portion. The material nature acts on the pure consciousness, covers up the pure consciousness of the living entity. Because the living entities are tiny, infinitesimal, and because they don't make proper use of their independence, so they get covered up by the material energy. Prabhupada continues talking about the living entities. Is that living entities are like the sun's rays. There's no qualitative difference between the sun and its rays. The difference is in the quantity. The sun's rays are sometimes overpowered by another energy, namely by clouds or by snowfall. So the living entities are qualitatively one with the superior, but they have the tendency to be overpowered by the inferior material energy. Because of their infinitesimal nature, they have that tendency to be overpowered. If we don't have the connection with the finite Lord, if we're not connected with the Supreme Lord, then we can be overpowered by the material energy. But if we're connected to the Lord, then we cannot be overpowered. And then Prabhupada gives, after talking about rays of the sun, then he gives the example about sparks of a fire. Just like the spark comes out of the fire. So the spark also has the nature of the fire. It has a burning potency, it has some heat, it has some light. But it's different from the original fire. So when the spark comes out of the original fire, then they may lose their fiery nature. They contact the non-fiery atmosphere. And so if they want to maintain the potency of the fire, they have to be connected to the original fire. The sparks can everlastingly remain within the original fire as its parts and parcels. But the moment the sparks become separated from the original fire, their misfortune begins. So two examples were given. The rays of the sun then the sparks from the fire. So the Lord is like the original fire. He's never overpowered. But the tiny sparks, they can be overpowered. So Prabhupada said, it is a ludicrous argument to say that the Lord is overpowered by the material energy. The Lord is the master of the material energy, but the living entities are controlled by the material nature. But people will argue and they will present their philosophy. Prabhupada said, frog philosophers, they cannot understand proper situation. But Prabhupada quotes how the demigods prayed to the Lord, that they said it's very difficult to understand the Lord, but he can be understood to some extent by those who engage in his loving service. Oh, wait, I missed it. Oh, okay. The living entity is in distress regarding his self-identity. He has no factual background. Like a man who dreams that he sees his head cut off. So, this example is given by Maitreya. He is saying that our distress is like that. That oh, my head is being cut off. You know, how could you see your head being cut off, you know? You wouldn't be able to see that. They cut off the heads, you know, they do that in France. In France they have the guillotine. And you know, in some countries they hang people, and in the US they have the electric chair, and in France they have the guillotine. They cut off the heads, you know. There was the French Revolution. Prabhupada came to France. He said, your country is famous for revolution. There was the French Revolution, you know, they cut the heads off all the royal family. The Queen of France and all the royal family, they were all wealthy and living comfortably, and the people were starving. And the people were starving, and they told the Queen, they told the Queen of France that, you know, the people have no money to eat bread. And she said, oh, they don't have money to eat bread? Why don't they eat cake? So when people heard that, then they had revolution. And the revolution, you know, they had to run away. Many of the royal family, they were beheaded, cut off their heads.
The guy who actually made the guillotine was also guillotined. The creator of the guillotine, he was also put into the guillotine.
Really?
Yeah.
Was his name Guillotine?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was part of that whole thing, and they also executed him that way.
Why?
I don't know, it's just a fact about the guillotine, that the guy who created it was also putting it.
You got the guillotine. Interesting. Okay. So Prabhupada, Maitreya gives this example, and Prabhupada said, just like sometimes the school teacher tells, I will cut off your head and hang it on the wall, and you can see your head is being cut off. And Prabhupada, then the student becomes afraid, and he stops all his nonsense. So our misery in the material world is like that we're thinking, you know, we're seeing our head cut off. We're thinking we're suffering. Actually, the soul is pure and the nature of the soul is blissful, but we're identifying with the material body. So it's the question of identification. The miseries of the pure soul and the disruption of his self-identification are managed by the external energy. There is no bondage or misery for the living entity, nor does he ever lose his pure knowledge. In his pure knowledge he thinks a little seriously about his position, and he can understand that he's eternally subordinate. So like that question of understanding our identity, the living entity, if we try to lord over the material nature, then we won't get any good result. But when we become frustrated, give up material activity, try to become one with the Lord, speculate, there'll also be no success. So activities are performed under the dictation of the illusory energy. And this is compared to having one's head cut off in a dream. So you see your head is being cut off. If a person's head is severed, he loses his power to see. So obviously if you see your head is being cut off, this is hallucination. You cannot. So the living entity is always subordinate to the Lord. He thinks that he is God himself, and that although he is God, he has lost his knowledge due to Maya. This conception has no meaning, just as there is no meaning to seeing one's head being cut off. Right? If we think that we are God, but we have lost, we've been put under Maya. So that means Maya is God. It means Maya is greater than God. Right? If Maya can conquer the living entity, if you are God and you're put under Maya, then Maya is the supreme. Maya is God. So that's why we say Mayavadis. We refer to these jnanis like that. So this is the illusion which people are in. So Prabhupada said, he should take to the normal life as a devotee and be relieved from the misconception of being God. The liberation of thinking oneself God is the last reaction of avidya. I came to Krishna consciousness like that. You know, they asked me, do you know who God is? I said, I'm God, you're God, we're all God. Because I've been reading all the Mayavadi books, and I know all this is Mayavadi philosophy. So when I went to the temple, I was thinking I knew everything. And so Prabhupada said, we have to relieve people from that misunderstanding. We have to understand our position as the eternal servant. Okay? So Prabhupada said the best course is to surrender to the Lord. Get rid of the Maya. It's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Get rid of Maya. Okay, so we'll have a break for Gayatri now.